Captain Alex Stone had been a soldier for many years. He had been to many planets, faced countless dangers, and fought in battles that most people couldn't imagine. But nothing prepared him for the strange, alien world he had landed on today. His mission was simple: explore the uncharted planet, gather information, and return. But as his ship descended through the thick atmosphere, something went wrong. The ship shook violently, alarms blared, and Alex gripped the controls tightly, trying to keep the ship steady. He fought to steer the ship through the violent winds, but the planet's gravity was too strong. Then, with a loud crash, the ship hit the ground, skidding across the rough, rocky surface. The world went dark. When Alex opened his eyes, his head was pounding. His vision was blurry, and everything felt wrong. He could hear the crackling of broken electronics and the smell of burning fuel. He slowly unbuckled himself from his seat and crawled out of the wrecked cockpit. The ship was ruined. Pieces of metal and broken glass were scattered around him. His hand went to his forehead, wiping away the blood. "I'm alive," he muttered to himself, surprised by how lucky he was. His injuries weren't serious, just some cuts and bruises, but he couldn't say the same for his ship. It was completely destroyed. He stood up and assessed his surroundings. The landscape was barren, with jagged rocks scattered across the land. It was an alien planet, cold and unwelcoming. The sky was a deep, strange color, and the air smelled unfamiliar. Alex knew he had to find shelter and figure out how to survive until rescue came. But first, he needed to check the crash site for any survivors. He carefully walked around the wreckage, scanning the area. That's when he saw something that made him stop in his tracks. Lying among the debris was a small alien figure. She was unconscious, her body bruised and battered. Her skin was a soft shade of green, and her long silver hair was tangled and covered in dirt. She wore strange clothes, unlike anything Alex had ever seen before. He could tell she was an alien, and she looked like she needed help. Without hesitation, Alex rushed to her side. He knelt down beside her, his hands trembling slightly as he checked her pulse. It was faint, but she was still alive. Her breathing was shallow, and she looked pale. He had to act quickly. Using what little strength he had, Alex carefully lifted her into his arms. "I've got you," he whispered, more to himself than to her. He needed to get her to safety, away from the wreckage and the dangers of the planet. He walked for what felt like hours, carrying the girl through the rocky terrain. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the land. The temperature dropped quickly, and the cold air made it harder to breathe. But Alex kept going, determined to keep her alive. Finally, he found a small cave tucked away in the side of a cliff. It wasn't much, but it would provide them with some shelter from the cold night ahead. Alex gently laid the girl down on the ground and took a moment to catch his breath. His body ached, but he couldn't rest. Not until she was safe. He rummaged through his pack, pulling out the emergency medical supplies he always carried. He knew he needed to treat her injuries fast if she was going to survive. He cleaned the cuts on her arms and legs, bandaging them carefully. Her wounds weren't life-threatening, but they would need time to heal. As he worked, he couldn't help but wonder who she was. She was clearly not from Earth. Her alien features, her strange clothes, and the fact that she had been on a spaceship all pointed to one thing. She was from another world. But why had she been on the ship? What was she doing here, on this dangerous planet? And what had happened to the rest of the crew? Alex sighed, his thoughts racing. There were too many questions, and he had no answers. For now, the only thing that mattered was keeping her alive. He needed to focus on that. He sat down beside her, watching her carefully. Her chest rose and fell with each breath, and Alex couldn't help but feel a strange sense of protectiveness toward her. She was an alien, yes, but she was a living being, just like him. She needed help, and he would do whatever it took to make sure she survived. As the night wore on, Alex stayed awake, watching over her. He could hear strange noises outside the cave. Alien creatures, no doubt. But he wasn't afraid. Not anymore. He had faced worse in his years as a soldier, and right now his focus was on her. The girl stirred slightly, her eyelids fluttering. Alex leaned forward, watching her closely. Slowly, her eyes opened. They were bright and a little wild, the color of a strange, glowing blue. She blinked a few times, as if trying to make sense of what was happening. Then her gaze landed on Alex. For a moment, there was silence. Then, in a voice that was weak but clear, she whispered, "Who are you?" Alex smiled softly. "I'm Captain Alex Stone, and I'm here to help you." The girl blinked again, confused but clearly relieved. "A human?" she whispered, as if the idea of a human helping her was hard to believe. Alex simply nodded, determined to keep her safe. The alien story. The cold night air made the cave even darker, but Alex didn't mind. He had built a small fire using some sticks and dried leaves. The warmth from the fire helped ease his tired muscles. He kept glancing at the alien girl lying in front of him, her strange blue eyes flickering with confusion. She hadn't said much since waking up, only watching him silently with those glowing eyes. Alex kept his distance at first, not wanting to overwhelm her. She had been through so much, and he didn't want to push her too hard. But the silence between them felt heavy. He needed to know more about her, to understand who she was and why she was on this planet. Slowly, he leaned forward, trying not to startle her. "Hey, you're safe now," he said softly. "What happened? Who are you?" The girl looked up at him, her eyes searching his face, as if trying to decide if she could trust him. Alex waited patiently, his face calm. Finally, she spoke, her voice shaky but clear. "My name is Lyra," she said quietly, her voice like a soft melody. "I come from the planet Valora." Alex nodded. "Valora? I've never heard of it." Lyra hesitated, looking down at her hands as if unsure whether to continue. She seemed to be thinking, deciding how much to reveal. Alex could tell she was scared. He gave her a reassuring smile. "It's okay. You don't have to tell me everything if you don't want to," he said. "But I want to help you. I can't let you stay here alone." Her eyes flickered with something like fear, but it quickly faded. After a long moment, Lyra took a deep breath and began to speak. "My people are different from yours," she said, her voice distant. "We are a proud race, powerful and ancient. I was born into a royal family. My father was the king of Valora, and I was the princess. I was raised to be the future ruler of my planet." She paused, as if the words hurt to say. Alex leaned in slightly, his expression softening. He could tell she was struggling, but he wanted to hear her story. "Then, what happened?" Alex asked gently. Lyra looked away, her eyes distant, as if seeing the events unfold in her mind. "There were enemies, people who wanted my power. They didn't care about me. They only cared about what I could give them. One day, my own people betrayed me. They sent me away, pretending I was being sent on a mission. But they didn't care if I lived or died. They left me to die on an unknown planet." Her voice shook as she spoke the words, and Alex felt a pang of sympathy. He had never experienced betrayal like that, but he could imagine how it must have felt to be abandoned by her own people. Betrayed by your own family. Alex whispered, almost to himself. "That's terrible." Lyra nodded slowly. "I was left alone. No one cared for me. I wandered the planet for days, starving and weak. But then I found the ship. It was my only chance to escape. I thought I could return to Valora, seek help from others who might still care. But the ship was damaged. And now, here I am." Her words were quiet now, filled with sadness and loss. Alex could feel the weight of her pain, but he knew he had to say something, anything to help her heal. "I'm sorry," Alex said softly. "I don't know what you've been through, but I won't abandon you. You're not alone anymore." Lyra looked at him then, her eyes filled with gratitude and something else, something that Alex couldn't quite name. She seemed surprised, as if she didn't believe anyone could care for her after everything she had been through. "I don't understand," Lyra whispered. "Why would you help me? I'm nothing. I have nothing to give." Alex smiled gently. "You're not nothing. You're a person, just like me. And everyone deserves help, especially when they're in need." She stared at him for a long moment, as if searching for something in his face. Slowly, she spoke again. "You're different," she said, her voice still quiet but with a touch of awe. "I've never met anyone like you, a human, helping an alien. I thought humans were dangerous, but you've shown me kindness." Alex chuckled softly, trying to lighten the mood. "We're not all bad, you know. Some of us can be pretty decent." Lyra smiled weakly. It was the first time she had smiled since Alex had found her. It was small, but it was there. And it made Alex feel like he was doing something right. "I don't know how to repay you," she said. "I have nothing to offer you. I'm just a lost princess, with no kingdom, no people. I don't even know if I'll ever make it home." "You don't have to repay me," Alex replied. "You don't owe me anything. I'm just here to help." Lyra's expression softened. She looked at Alex with a mix of gratitude and something deeper, something Alex couldn't quite place. For a moment, there was a silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that spoke more than words ever could. "Thank you," Lyra whispered. "You saved my life." Alex nodded, his eyes meeting hers. "It's what I do, and I'll keep doing it, as long as you need me." Lyra's eyes shimmered, a faint glow in the darkness of the cave. "You're not like the others. You're different." Alex gave her a reassuring smile. "I'm just a soldier, but for now, I'm your soldier." The chase. Alex woke up early the next morning, the cold air of the cave biting into his skin. He could hear the sounds of alien creatures outside, distant roars and rustling leaves. The fire from the night before had died down, leaving only smoldering embers. The cave felt quieter now, but Alex knew it wouldn't stay peaceful for long. He looked over at Lyra. She was still sleeping, her silver hair spread out around her like a halo. Her breathing was steady, but Alex could tell she hadn't fully recovered. Her face still looked pale, and the bruises on her arms and legs hadn't healed. He needed to keep her safe, and to do that, they couldn't stay here forever. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed from outside. Alex's heart skipped a beat. He didn't recognize the sound, but it was a deep, rumbling growl. It made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He stood up quickly, trying not to make noise as he moved toward the cave entrance. The growl came again, closer this time. Whatever it was heading straight for them. Alex's hand went to the blaster at his side. He didn't want to use it unless he had to, but he wasn't going to let anything happen to Lyra. He quickly turned back to her, shaking her gently. "Lyra, wake up. We need to move," he said urgently. Her eyes fluttered open, confusion filling her gaze at first. Then, as she heard the growls, she sat up quickly, looking toward the entrance. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know, but we need to leave." "Now," Alex said, pulling her to her feet. Lyra didn't argue. She trusted him. Alex helped her gather what little gear they had left. Then they headed for the back of the cave. They couldn't go out the front. It was too dangerous. Alex scanned the surroundings for a way to escape, and his eyes locked onto a narrow passageway leading deeper into the rocks. It was a tight fit, but it was their only chance. "Stay close," Alex said, leading the way. Lyra followed him as he squeezed through the passage. It was cramped, but it felt safer than staying in the open. The growls grew louder as they moved deeper into the cave system, and Alex's pace quickened. They didn't speak much as they moved, both of them focused on the task at hand. Lyra's breath was shallow, her body still weak from her injuries. Alex kept a steady pace, trying to keep her from falling behind. He could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the danger closing in on them. They came to a small open cavern. It was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of Lyra's skin. The blue hue of her alien blood seemed to shine even in the darkness, but Alex knew they couldn't stay here for long. "What do you think it is?" Lyra asked, her voice barely a whisper. Alex crouched low, listening carefully. The growls had stopped, but he didn't trust the silence. "I don't know, but we can't wait to find out." He scanned the cavern, searching for an escape route. His eyes landed on a narrow tunnel on the far side, just large enough for them to crawl through. It was their only way out. Without another word, Alex grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her toward it. They crawled through the tunnel as quickly as they could, the walls pressing against them. It was tight, and Lyra was still struggling to keep up. Alex could hear her labored breaths behind him, but he didn't slow down. They had to get out. They couldn't stay here, not with whatever was chasing them. Suddenly, there was a loud crash behind them. Alex's heart skipped a beat. The creature was here. He pushed himself harder, trying to make it to the end of the tunnel. The growls were getting closer, louder now, and Alex could hear the sound of heavy feet pounding against the ground. They were running out of time. Finally, they reached the end of the tunnel. Alex helped Lyra climb out first, then followed her. They found themselves on the edge of a steep cliff, with a drop that seemed endless. There was no way down, no way to run. Behind them, the creature appeared, its massive form blocking the entrance to the tunnel. Alex could barely make out its shape in the dim light, but he could see its eyes glowing in the darkness. It was huge, covered in thick scales, with long claws that could tear through steel. The creature let out another low growl, its eyes fixed on them. Lyra's eyes widened in fear. "We're trapped," she whispered. Alex's mind raced. He wasn't going to let them die here. Not like this. He looked around desperately, trying to find something, anything they could use to fight back. His eyes landed on a sharp rock formation at the edge of the cliff. It was jagged and pointed, just the right size for a weapon. He grabbed it and turned to Lyra. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. He took a step forward, holding the rock in his hand like a knife. The creature took a step toward them, its growl growing louder. Alex's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't back down. He had to protect Lyra. He had no other choice. The creature roared and lunged at them. Alex swung the rock with all his strength, aiming for the creature's eyes. He hit it, and the creature howled in pain, stumbling back. It was only for a moment, but it was enough. Lyra grabbed Alex's arm, pulling him away from the cliff's edge. "We need to move. Now," she shouted. Alex didn't hesitate. He pulled her toward a narrow path along the cliffside, running as fast as he could. The creature was still behind them, but it was slower now, injured by the blow. They had a chance. For now, they were alive. But for how long? A dangerous offer. The rocky path twisted and turned as Alex and Lyra ran, their hearts pounding with each step. The creature was still chasing them, its loud growls echoing in the distance. Alex knew they couldn't outrun it forever. The cliffs were too narrow, and there were too many obstacles in their way. They had to find a way to fight back or escape. Fast. They came to a narrow bridge that stretched across a deep ravine. The wooden planks creaked under their feet, and the wind howled around them. Alex hesitated for just a second. It was a risky path, but it was the only way forward. "Stay close," he said, gripping Lyra's hand tightly. She nodded, her face pale from exhaustion, but her eyes were filled with determination. She wasn't going to give up now. As they crossed the bridge, Alex glanced back. The creature had stopped at the edge of the ravine, its glowing eyes watching them closely. It was waiting. It seemed like it was trying to decide whether to chase them across the bridge or find another way around. "What now?" Lyra asked, her voice shaky. "I don't know. But we can't keep running like this, Alex said, his mind racing. They needed to think of a plan, something clever. We need to stop the creature, slow it down, or make it back off. We can't fight it head on. Lyra's eyes widened. But how? It's huge. We're not strong enough. I know, Alex muttered. He looked around, scanning the area for anything that could help them. His eyes fell on a rock formation near the edge of the ravine, just beneath the bridge. It was a long shot, but it might work. Wait here, Alex said. I have an idea. Before Lyra could stop him, Alex carefully slid down the side of the bridge, his feet finding the narrow ledges below. He moved quickly, using the rocks for balance. Lyra stayed where she was, watching him anxiously from above. Alex reached the bottom, where a few large rocks were scattered. He picked up the biggest one he could find, weighing it in his hands. It wasn't much, but it was heavy. It could cause a distraction. He climbed back up to the bridge and placed the rock at the edge. If he could use it right, it might fall and hit the creature, stunning it long enough for them to get away. Alex, what are you doing? Lyra called down to him. Just trust me. Alex replied with a grin. He carefully set the rock in place, trying to make sure it wouldn't fall too soon. Then he quickly moved back toward the bridge's center, where Lyra was standing. Get ready, he warned her. With one last look at the creature, Alex pushed the rock with all his strength. It tumbled off the side of the bridge, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The creature's glowing eyes followed the rock as it fell, and when it hit the ground with a loud crash, the creature roared in surprise. The creature charged forward in anger, but the ground beneath the bridge gave way with a loud creak. Alex's heart raced as he watched the creature leap toward the bridge, its massive claws reaching out. But at the last second, the creature's claws missed the edge, and it fell to the rocks below with a deafening crash. The two of them stood in stunned silence. They had done it. They had stopped the creature, at least for now. But there was no time to relax. They still had a long way to go, and the creature might not stay down for long. That was incredible, Lyra whispered, her voice filled with awe. Alex smiled, but the victory felt hollow. They weren't safe yet. They still had to find a way out of this alien world. They couldn't keep running from danger forever. Before Alex could speak, a voice interrupted him. It was a strange voice, deep and echoing, like it came from all around them. You are brave, human, the voice said, but you cannot run from me forever. Alex froze, his body tensing. He looked around, but there was no one in sight. The voice had come from nowhere. The voice continued. I am not your enemy, human. I do not wish to harm you or your companion, but I can offer you something that will make your journey easier. Lyra's eyes widened, and she took a step back. What? What does it mean? The voice chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. I am the leader of the creatures you've been running from. I control this land. If you want to survive, I can offer you a deal. You will serve me, help me in my mission, and I will protect you. I will provide for you both, and you will have the power you need to survive. Refuse, and you will die here. Alex clenched his fists. He didn't trust this voice, this being that seemed to control everything. He didn't want to make deals with the enemy, especially when it sounded like a trap. You want us to work for you? Alex asked, his voice hard. And what's in it for us? The voice laughed again. You misunderstand, human. This is not a choice. You will serve me, or you will be destroyed. Lyra stepped forward, her expression conflicted. Alex, maybe we should listen. Maybe this is the only way. No, Alex said, shaking his head. We don't owe this creature anything. We don't know who it really is or what it wants. We can't trust it. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the voice spoke again, its tone darker. You will regret this decision, human. But know this, I will be watching you. You cannot escape. The presence faded, and Alex and Lyra were left standing on the bridge, the weight of the offer still hanging in the air. "What do we do now?" Lyra asked, her voice trembling. "We keep moving," Alex said firmly. "We don't trust anyone here. We'll find another way out." But as they walked away, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the creature's offer wasn't the last they would hear of it. He had made an enemy, and it wouldn't be easy to escape its grip. Growing feelings. The days seemed to blur together as Alex and Lyra continued their journey. The alien world was vast and strange, full of dangers at every turn. Yet, despite the constant threat from the creatures and the ever-present feeling of being hunted, something had begun to change between them. At first, Alex had only thought of Lyra as the girl he had saved. She was an alien, after all, from a completely different world, and there was a certain distance between them, something unspoken. But now, as they spent more time together, that distance was shrinking. It was becoming harder to ignore. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the rocky landscape, Alex sat beside a campfire. Lyra was sitting across from him, staring into the flames. Her long silver hair shimmered in the dim light, and her bright, curious eyes reflected the fire's glow. Alex couldn't help but notice how beautiful she looked, even though she wasn't trying to be. She had a quiet strength to her that fascinated him. It wasn't just her alien features, though. Her kindness, her determination, her intelligence. Those were the things that drew him in. He found himself wanting to protect her, wanting to be the one she could rely on. Lyra shifted, breaking his train of thought. "Alex, I don't know how to thank you," she said softly, her voice full of emotion. "You've done so much for me." She paused, unsure of how to continue. Alex raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Lyra looked down at her hands, twisting them nervously. "I've never met anyone like you before. You've shown me kindness, even when I didn't deserve it. I don't know what I would have done without you." Alex felt his heart skip a beat. He hadn't expected her to say that. He had saved her, yes, but he never thought she would feel this way. A part of him had always known that she was grateful, but hearing her say it out loud made it all the more real. "You don't need to thank me," Alex said, his voice gentle. "I did what anyone would have done. You've been through so much. I wanted to help." Lyra gave him a small, thankful smile, but Alex could see the sadness in her eyes. "But you've done more than just help. You've given me hope again. I was alone for so long, but with you, I don't feel so lost anymore." Alex's chest tightened. He wasn't sure how to respond. His mind raced as he thought about how to explain what he was feeling. The truth was, he didn't know if this was just a passing feeling, something that would fade once they were safe, or if it was something more. But as he looked at Lyra, he couldn't deny that a part of him had already grown fond of her. "I'm glad I could be here for you," Alex said finally, his voice low. He looked away, unsure of how to express what was really on his mind. The fire crackled, filling the silence between them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. It was a peaceful silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. In fact, it felt like the most natural thing in the world to sit there together, both lost in their thoughts. Then Lyra spoke again, her voice quiet but clear. "Alex, do you think we could be more than just two strangers running for our lives?" Alex blinked, his heart racing. The question caught him off guard, but the longer he thought about it, the more he realized that he hadn't been able to stop thinking about her either. His feelings for her had grown, more than he had realized. He didn't have all the answers, and the situation they were in was far from ideal, but he knew one thing for sure. He cared about her. "I don't know what the future holds, Lyra," Alex said, his voice earnest. "But I do know this. I want to keep you safe. I want to make sure you're okay. I care about you." Lyra's eyes softened, and a faint blush spread across her cheeks. "I care about you, too," she whispered. Alex smiled at her, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew this wasn't the best time or place for these feelings to grow, but it was happening. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel so alone. The next few days were filled with small, quiet moments like this. As they traveled, Alex and Lyra spoke more openly about their thoughts and fears. Lyra shared stories of her home planet, her family, and the traditions of her people. Alex told her about his life back on Earth, about his family, and how he had joined the military to make a difference. They learned more about each other with each passing day. The connection between them only deepened. Lyra started to laugh at Alex's jokes, even the bad ones. She began to trust him more, leaning on him when she needed support. And Alex found himself always looking out for her, always making sure she was safe, always wanting to protect her. At night, when they would lie beside the fire to rest, Alex would sometimes find himself just staring at Lyra, trying to understand what was happening. He wasn't sure if this was love. He hadn't had time to think that much about it, but it felt like something important, something real. One evening, as they sat near the fire, Lyra leaned her head on Alex's shoulder. She didn't say anything, but just the act of being close to him made Alex's heart race. It was as if, in this alien world full of chaos, they had found something that felt like home. Alex, Lyra said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "Thank you for saving me. For everything. I don't know what I would do without you." Alex looked down at her, his eyes full of warmth. "You're not alone anymore," he said. "We're in this together. I won't let anything happen to you." And in that moment, with the stars above them and the warmth of the fire between them, Alex realized that he would do anything to keep her safe. No matter what it took, he would protect Lyra. And just maybe in the process, he had found something worth fighting for, something he never expected to find in a strange alien world. The last stand. The quiet of the night was shattered by a loud crack, followed by the roar of engines. Alex's heart raced as he grabbed Lyra's arm. The sound had come from the direction of their camp's defenses. Something was closing in on them. It wasn't a creature. It was something far worse. "Alex, what's happening?" Lyra asked, her voice filled with fear. She stood close to him, her silver eyes wide with panic. She had been through so much already, but this felt different. This felt like it was the end. "I think they found us," Alex muttered, his eyes scanning the dark horizon. The distant lights of the enemy's ships flickered like stars in the night sky. They were coming, and they wouldn't stop until they had both of them. The humans who had been chasing them for days, hunting them down like animals, were getting closer. It was the same group that had been sent to capture Alex and Lyra, the ruthless soldiers who had no care for who they hurt in the process. They had been relentless, and now they were ready to finish what they had started. "We need to move, now," Alex said urgently. He looked at Lyra, trying to hide the worry in his voice, but even he wasn't sure how much longer they could run. The soldiers were closing in too fast, and their chances of escaping were growing slimmer by the second. "I won't leave you," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. She grabbed Alex's hand, her grip firm. She was ready to fight beside him. Alex squeezed her hand. "I'm not going anywhere without you, Lyra, but we have to stay smart. We need to hold them off just long enough to make it to the escape route." The two of them quickly moved to the edge of their small camp, where they had prepared for this moment. Alex had set up traps and defenses earlier, but even he knew it might not be enough. The enemy was far too powerful, and they didn't have the resources to fight back like they needed to. Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with determination. "What can I do?" Alex turned to face her. "Stay behind me. If they get too close, I need you to run. Find the escape route, and don't stop." "No," she replied firmly. "I'm not running from this. Not when you've done so much for me. We fight together." Alex stared at her, surprised. He knew she had strength, but this was more than he expected. This wasn't just a girl who wanted to survive. This was someone who was willing to stand and fight for what she believed in. She wasn't running from the fight anymore. She was ready to make her stand. "All right, we fight," Alex agreed, his voice filled with respect. They didn't have much time. Alex quickly surveyed the area. There was a narrow canyon nearby, a place where the enemy couldn't send their full forces. If they could make it there, they might stand a chance. But they had to move quickly, or they would be trapped. They heard the soldiers' voices then, shouting commands as they closed in. The first shot rang out, striking the ground near their feet. Alex dove to the side, pulling Lyra with him. The ground shook as explosions rang out in the distance. They were getting closer, and the sound of boots on the rocky terrain told him there was no turning back. "Stay low," Alex whispered. He motioned for Lyra to follow him as they sprinted toward the canyon. The night air felt heavy with tension. They had made it this far, but could they make it to safety? Suddenly, a bright flash of light cut through the darkness. Alex and Lyra were caught in the spotlight of an enemy searchlight. They were exposed. Alex's heart slammed against his chest as he grabbed Lyra and pulled her behind a large rock, trying to shield her from view. This is it, Alex thought. There was no escape this time. The enemy was too close. But then, just as the soldiers began to close in, a loud roar echoed through the canyon. The ground trembled beneath them. It wasn't just one enemy ship, it was several. Alex's eyes widened as the sky lit up with flashes of red and green. It wasn't the soldiers he had been trying to escape from. It was something much bigger and much more dangerous. The new threat had arrived. "Get down," Alex yelled. He threw himself on top of Lyra, protecting her as explosions rocked the ground. The enemy soldiers froze, their weapons aimed at the sky. Whatever was coming, it was bigger than they could handle. The ground split apart as the first of the massive alien creatures emerged from the shadows. It was unlike anything Alex had ever seen. The creature was a towering, armored beast with glowing red eyes, and its steps sent shockwaves through the canyon floor. It roared again, louder this time, and the soldiers scattered in panic. Is that a war beast?" Lyra asked, her voice filled with awe and fear. Alex nodded, his mind racing. These creatures were known for being nearly unstoppable. The soldiers were no match for them, and now, the very creatures that had been terrorizing the planet were turning their fury on the ones who had hunted Alex and Lyra. The battle between the soldiers and the war beasts raged on, but Alex and Lyra didn't wait to see the outcome. Now was their chance. With the soldiers distracted, they had to make a move. They sprinted for the canyon's exit, dodging falling debris and explosions. The war beasts would deal with the soldiers, but it was up to them to escape the chaos alive. As they neared the exit, Alex pulled Lyra into a narrow path leading deeper into the canyon. They were both covered in dust, breathless, but alive. "We made it," Lyra said, her voice full of relief. Alex looked at her, a determined smile on his face. "We're not out of the woods yet, but we're getting closer." They were far from safe, but in that moment, Alex felt a surge of hope. They had survived the worst, and as long as they kept moving forward together, there was nothing they couldn't face. A new life together. The sun was rising as Alex and Lyra made their way through the dense forest. Their bodies were bruised and tired, but their hearts felt lighter than ever before. After everything they had been through, escaping from the soldiers, surviving the attacks, and fighting their way through dangers, today felt different. Today felt like the beginning of something new. Alex glanced at Lyra, who walked beside him. Her silver hair shimmered in the morning light, and her eyes, once filled with fear and uncertainty, now carried a quiet strength. She had changed so much since the day he first rescued her. She had learned how to trust, how to fight for herself, and most of all, how to trust him. "Alex," Lyra spoke softly, her voice breaking the silence. "Do you think we'll be safe here? I mean, for real?" Alex smiled, glancing back at her. "I think we will be. We've made it through worse, right? Lyra nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. I guess you're right. But I'm still not sure what's going to happen next. It's so different here, so peaceful. For a moment, Alex paused and looked around at the quiet forest. The birds chirped in the trees, and the air smelled fresh. It felt like they had entered another world, one that didn't know the chaos they had left behind. There was no one chasing them, no more threats of capture, no more battles to fight. Just peace. We'll figure it out, Alex said, his voice steady. Together. Lyra stopped walking for a moment, her eyes filled with emotion. I don't know if I'll ever be able to thank you enough for saving me, Alex. For everything. Alex turned to her, taking a step closer. He reached out and gently touched her hand. You don't have to thank me, Lyra. I did what anyone would do. And besides, I couldn't leave you behind. You mean more to me than you know. Lyra looked up at him, her heart racing. She had never felt this way before. She had always been alone, always had to fight to survive. But now, with Alex by her side, everything was different. She didn't feel alone anymore. Alex noticed the change in her eyes and felt his own heart beat faster. He had been through a lot in his life. Tough situations, endless battles, but none of that compared to how he felt in this moment. With Lyra. Lyra hesitated, her voice catching in her throat. I've never had anyone like you before. Someone who would protect me, care for me. I feel like I owe you everything. I feel like I need to be with you, always. Alex's chest tightened. He took a deep breath, his feelings for her clear now. He had known from the moment he saved her that she was special, but the way she spoke now, it confirmed everything he had been feeling. The bond between them was something stronger than he had ever experienced. Lyra, you don't owe me anything, Alex said, his voice soft yet firm. But if you want to be with me, if you want us to stay together, I'd never let anything come between us. Lyra's heart soared. She could see the sincerity in Alex's eyes, the way he truly cared for her. He wasn't just protecting her out of duty or because he had to. He cared about her well-being, her happiness. That was something she never thought she'd experience. I want that, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I want to be with you, Alex. I want to build a life with you. Alex stepped forward, his hand gently cupping her cheek. We'll make it happen. Together. I promise. They stood there for a moment, the weight of their journey finally beginning to feel like a distant memory. The war, the danger, the survival, it all seemed far away now. What mattered now was the future they could create. With a deep breath, Alex took her hand, and they continued walking through the forest. They had no destination in mind, no plans, just the knowledge that they were free. Free from the past, free from the enemies that had hunted them, free to start over. The world was wide open, full of possibilities. They could make their own path. They could choose where to go, what to do, and who to become. It was up to them. As they walked, Lyra suddenly stopped and looked around. She noticed a small, peaceful clearing up ahead, surrounded by tall trees. The sun was higher now, casting a warm glow over everything. This could be our new home, she said, a hint of excitement in her voice. Alex looked around, taking in the beauty of the clearing. It was perfect, quiet, secluded, and safe. For the first time in a long time, he felt like they had found a place where they could truly be themselves. I think it's perfect, Alex agreed, smiling. This could be where we start our new life. Lyra smiled back, her eyes shining with hope. She had never imagined that she would find peace after everything she had been through. But here, with Alex by her side, everything felt right. She finally felt like she belonged somewhere. They sat down together in the clearing, the silence between them comfortable, peaceful. It was a silence that didn't feel empty. It felt full of promise. The future was uncertain, but one thing was for sure. No matter what came next, they would face it together. Alex and Lyra were no longer just two survivors. They were partners, ready to build a life in this new world they had found. And for the first time, both of them felt like they had a home.